My brother tried to throw out our mother's will before anyone had even finished dessert after the funeral. According to him, it's not fair. He stood in Mom's dining room waving the envelope she'd signed 6 months before she died. The same dining room where we'd eaten 30 years of Christmas dinners and birthday cakes and Sunday pot roasts. He looked straight at me and said, "Nobody has to know this existed." That's when I realized 2 things. First, my brother had no intention of respecting our mother's final wishes. And second, I wasn't the only person Mom had prepared for this exact moment. Because sitting safely in my purse was a video recording that was about to change everything. Before I tell you what Mom said in that video, tell me where you're watching from tonight. And if you've ever seen a family change the moment inheritance entered the conversation, subscribe. Because this story isn't about money. It's about dignity. My name is Caroline. I'm 39 years old. My mother, Ruth, died on a Tuesday morning in late September. She was 78. She had been declining for about 18 months, slowly, then faster the way these things go. And by the end, she was in the same house she had lived in for 41 years, in the bedroom where she'd slept for 4 decades, with the blue curtains she'd sewn herself still on the windows, and the smell of her hand lotion still in the air. I want to tell you about my mother before I tell you anything else. Ruth was the kind of woman who hand-wrote birthday cards when everyone else had gone to texting. She kept every card anyone had ever sent her, decades of them, in a shoebox in the hall closet, organized in a way I did not fully understand but that she could navigate instantly. She made Sunday dinners that started in the morning and weren't finished until late afternoon, and always had more food than anyone needed because she was the kind of person who believed an empty plate was a problem and a full table was a kind of love. Her recipe box was a document of her life. Index cards in her handwriting, some of them stained with decades of actual use, with notes in the margins like Daddy's favorite and double the vanilla, and on one particular card for a lemon pound cake, just the word perfect circled 3 times. She tucked notes into cookbooks. She left small pieces of paper with her handwriting in places you found unexpectedly, months or years later, and each one was a small conversation with someone who is no longer in the room. She loved Dad's old record player, which still sat in the living room even though my father had been gone for 12 years. She played it on Sunday mornings. She knew which albums skipped and on which songs, and she adjusted accordingly, the way you accommodate the quirks of things you have loved for a long time. I moved back to town 4 years ago to be closer to her after Dad died. Not in her house. I had my own apartment 10 minutes away, but close enough to take her to appointments, to have dinner on Thursdays, to be the person she called when the internet stopped working or when something in the house made a sound she didn't recognize. My brother Dennis lived 2 states away. He called on holidays and occasionally for birthdays. He was not cruel about it. He was simply absent in the particular way of someone who has decided that the responsibilities of proximity belong to whoever is closest. Have you ever seen families change after someone passes away? Let me know below. Because what I watched happen in that dining room was not grief. Grief, I understand. Grief, I was living. What I watched was something colder. Dennis had driven up for the funeral with his wife and 2 teenagers who spent the reception looking at their phones in the kitchen. He was sad, genuinely. I want to say that because it is true. He loved our mother. He just loved her in the way people love things from a distance, which is easier and less costly and less transforming than the kind of love that requires you to be somewhere specific on a Thursday night when the weather is bad. After the reception wound down and most of the neighbors and friends had gone, the family was left at the house. Dennis's wife was washing dishes. His teenagers had retreated to the living room. Our Aunt Elaine and her husband were sitting quietly at the dining room table, which had been cleared but still smelled of the casseroles people had brought. Dennis went into Mom's bedroom. I don't know exactly what he was looking for. When he came back out, he was holding an envelope. He looked at the return address on the upper left corner. He looked at me. He said, "Did you know about this?" I said, "Know about what?" He opened the envelope and read it. And then he put it down on the dining room table and he said, "This isn't fair. Stay with me." Because when everyone gathered in Mom's living room to watch that video, the entire room went quiet in a way I will never forget. The will had been drafted by an estate attorney 6 months before Mom died. I had driven her to that appointment. I had sat in the waiting room while she was inside, the same way I sat in waiting rooms for all her appointments, reading whatever was on my phone, and not asking what they discussed because that was between her and her attorney. What the will specified was this: the house and the majority of the estate went to me. Dennis received a portion, a meaningful one, not a token, but not the equal split he had apparently expected. There were specific bequests for the grandchildren. The recipe box was specifically named and specifically given to me. So was the record player. Dennis stood in the dining room and said the house should be split equally. He said it wasn't fair that he was receiving less. He said Mom hadn't been thinking clearly in her final months. He said, and this is the part that I keep coming back to, he said nobody had to know this will existed. Our Aunt Elaine looked at him across the table. She said, Dennis. He said he wasn't trying to be difficult. He said he was just saying that they could handle it another way. He said the attorney's paperwork could be, he used the word reconsidered. I said, I need to show everyone something. 6 weeks before she died, my mother had asked me to help her record a video. She'd call me on a Sunday afternoon and said she had something she wanted to document, and she needed someone she trusted to help with the technical side of it. I came over with my phone, set it up on the kitchen counter at her direction, and pressed record. Then I left the room. She had asked me to leave the room, and I had, and when she called me back 20 minutes later, she asked me to show her how to save the file and send it to herself in email. She told me not to watch it. I hadn't. I had sent her the file, and then, at her request, she had forwarded it to the estate attorney with instructions that I be given a copy following her death. The attorney had sent it to me the day before the funeral. I had not opened it. I had simply put it in my purse, and I had sat with it through the service and the reception, and I had waited. I connected my phone to the television in the living room. Dennis's wife came in from the kitchen. Aunt Elaine moved to a chair where she could see. Dennis stood near the doorway with his arms crossed. I pressed play. My mother appeared on the screen. She was sitting at her kitchen table. The light through the window was the late afternoon autumn light that I knew from 1,000 Sunday dinners. She was wearing the blue cardigan she wore when she was comfortable. Her hair was the way she kept it. Her hands were folded on the table. She looked directly at the camera. She said, "If you're watching this, it means I'm no longer there. And I want to say a few things before anyone starts making decisions on my behalf." She paused. She said, "These decisions weren't made quickly. I thought about them for a long time. I talked to my attorney. I made sure everything was in order. And I wanted people who love me to know that what I decided reflects what I actually believe is right. Not what's easiest and not what's equal, because fair and equal are not always the same thing." She looked at the camera for a moment without speaking. Then she said, "Caroline has been here. Not because I asked her to give up years of her life. She chose that. She showed up on the Thursdays when it would have been easier not to. She sat in the waiting rooms. She learned what medications I was taking and why. She was the person I called when I was scared, and she never made me feel like a burden for calling." She said, "I know some people will say this isn't fair." She said, "I made these choices myself. I was clear-minded when I made them. And if anyone tries to tell you otherwise, I want this video to be the answer." Then she looked straight at the camera and said, "Dennis, I love you. That hasn't changed, and it won't change. But love isn't the same as entitlement. The years matter. The presence matters. I hope someday you'll understand that." The video ended. If you've ever been the person quietly showing up while others only appeared for the recognition, subscribe. Because sometimes love isn't measured in words. It's measured in consistency. The room was silent for a moment. Dennis said, "She wouldn't have wanted it this way." Our Aunt Elaine said, very quietly, "She literally just told us she did." He looked at me. His face had the expression of a man who has just lost an argument he had expected to win and is trying to locate a different argument in the same terrain. He said, "You set this up. You influenced her." I said, "I left the room. Ask the attorney." He said, "You're really choosing a piece of paper over your own brother?" I said, "No. I'm choosing to respect our mother's voice when she can no longer speak for herself." He didn't answer. His wife took him by the arm and said something low and quiet that I couldn't hear. He stood there for a moment, and then he walked into the kitchen, and I heard the back door open and close. Our aunt stayed. She helped me put the remaining dishes away. She didn't say much about what had happened, because Elaine has always understood that some things don't need to be spoken once they've been seen. When everyone was gone, I sat down at the kitchen table. I found the recipe box on the counter. Someone had moved it there at some point during the reception. I opened it. The index cards were there the way they had always been, in her handwriting, smelling faintly of vanilla and something harder to name. I found the lemon pound cake card with the word perfect circled 3 times. I found a card for a chicken casserole with Dennis's favorite, age 7, written in the corner. I found one for a birthday cake she had made me 31 years ago, the one with the coconut frosting I had requested specifically and she had made specifically, and in the margin she had written my name and a small heart. She had kept all of it. Every year. Every request. Every Sunday dinner and Thursday evening and waiting room and medication schedule and scared phone call answered in the middle of the night. She had kept it all. And then, when she knew the time was coming, she had made sure it was documented. She had sat down at her kitchen table in the late afternoon light, and she had spoken directly to the camera, and she had said what she needed to say. She had known that love alone wouldn't stop the conflict. She had known her son. She had known her daughter. And she had prepared for both of them. Do you believe parents should explain their decisions before they're gone? I genuinely want to know. My brother thought destroying Mom's will would erase her final wishes. What he forgot was that my mother had spent her entire life making sure her voice was heard. And even after she was gone, she still had the final word.